And then there was the same thing happened. He left his cell phone unsecured, and it was unlocked on my, not on my desk, but next to my desk. I remember I get on there, I'm like, oh, Facebook. And I wrote some pretty savory shit on his Facebook and posted it. I was famous for that. And then he came back in and, he found his phone, and I can remember he's like, oh my God. Hello everybody, Terrence Pop here with another episode of Live from the Lair. And today I'm going to be going over a subject which is pretty sad. But the way it works in life, you get born and you die, and what you do in between is what really matters. But this video is going out to one Staff Sergeant Joshua VIN Belsen. He was killed a little over a year ago in a motorcycle accident. He was one of my soldiers who I had the honor of mentoring when he first showed up at my doorstep. Now normally, when you've been around in the Army a while, most of the soldiers you come across, they're jaded, or they're upset, or there's something going on with them because they were failed long before they show up at your doorstep. And as a good NCO, it's your job, if you're doing the job correctly, is to try to rehabilitate those individuals and get them on the straight and narrow, or at least, in the 50-meter circle, which is a go max for the Army. But old VIN Belsen showed up, and I believe he was 17 years old. They brought him in after he enlisted, and he walking around, Mr. Eager Beaver, and I remember I was like, God damn, this kid's got way too much energy. I'm like, and I wasn't really in the mood to deal with a new private, because there's a lot of issues that go on with those too, especially in today's day and age. A lot of the newer soldiers that I would see, before they would come in, couldn't even do 5 push-ups. Couldn't do a chin-up, could barely run a mile in like 12 minutes. I mean, it was terrible, this Xbox body. But VIN Belsen, he wasn't like that. He was tall and lanky, pimply-faced kid, Mr. Eager Beaver. And I remember I called him to his face, and I quote, I called him, "You long-neck, slack-jawed, skinny beanpole." And I told him to eat a sandwich, and, maybe I'd see him back here if he made it. Because a lot of times you see these kids, they say they're going to do stuff, they never show up. Well, he showed up. It was like 6 months later, 7 months later, he came back from basic and AIT, and newly minted civil affairs, I think it was a private E2. And, he comes in, I shake his hand, he goes, "You remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're the Beanpole kid." He just kind of laughs. He wasn't an idiot. This guy was very smart. And, I got to talk to him, throughout that drill. And he told me he was an Eagle Scout, and his father was a preacher. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy is going to get his lunch eaten. He's way, way too nice. People are going to take advantage of this kid. I'm going to have to teach him some life lessons as Pop style, so down the road he can avoid being, jaded and upset, because people will take advantage of that shit in a heartbeat. I've seen it done. So every chance I had him do every shit detail that came down the pipe. Made him buff the floor, take out the trash, mow the grass, which was unnecessary since we had a company that came in and mowed the grass, but I always made him mow this one patch because I was fucking with him. Had him break rocks a couple times, sweep the formation hall, made him the guidon bear, and he would have to throw out the food at the end of, of each day of the drill. I caught him once, he wasn't really throwing the food out since it was going to waste. He was taking it and giving it to people who didn't have any food. So I yelled at him, but it was more like a tertiary yelling with no consequences at all, because I appreciate what he was doing. He was trying to take care of his fellow man. Got it. Good on him for it. But I still fucked with him mercilessly. Took about 7 months. Maybe 8. And then I remember we got done with the class, and I'm like, hey, VIN Belsen, pick up all the spit cups and empty the trash. And he's like, Sergeant Pop, I'm going to talk to you in the hallway. I'm like, oh, this is going to get good. So I walk out there, and he's just like, Sergeant Pop, he gets a parade rest, of course. Sergeant Pop, I want to know why you're making me do all of this goddamn horse shit when those 3 noobs are against the wall, haven't done goddamn fuck all. He didn't usually use that F word unless he was really pissed off. He was really straight and narrow kind of kid. And I remember I'm like, oh, thank God. He gives me this weird look like, and I'm like, I didn't know how much longer I could keep fucking with you, man. You almost wore me down. And he's just like, he didn't understand. And I said, look, Josh, man, you're an Eagle Scout. Your dad's a preacher. You got a strong religious background. You're very naive, and people are going to take advantage of you. And for the rest of your life, I want you to remember this one lesson. Doesn't matter who it is, how high up the flagpole they go. If they're disrespecting you, you need to stand up for yourself and speak up immediately, not wait 8 goddamn months. He's like, yeah? I'm like, yeah. He goes, am I still going to clean up the classroom? I'm like, no. Put those other fucks into work, and you're in charge. I think he was a PFC by then. Yeah, he still did a lot of shit stuff, but he was always in charge after that. Every once in a while I'd task him for stuff that I really needed done, and I didn't have time to basically follow behind and inspect. I wanted it done right the first time, and that was it. And he was always good for that. Now, another thing VIN Belsen would do that was, reminded me of myself, is he was a PT stud. He wasn't like that kid who came off the block who couldn't do 5 push-ups. He rocked the push-up sit-ups, and he would run that 2 miles in like 12 minutes, 11:55, no problem. The guy he was fast. I was fast in my day when I was like 19, but the fastest I ever ran the 2 miles in was 12 minutes, 5 seconds. So he had me beat by 15, 20 seconds. And, this is towards the tail end of my career. I'd been wounded a couple times, gained a little weight. I was having a hard time with the runs. In '89, I had a dislocated hip. I got a fucked up neck and back, and, migraine headaches from getting blown up and shit. So, I'm taking the PT test at one drill, and VIN Belsen had already passed it. And I remember I'm coming around the run, and, I was coming close to the time. I had like one more lap to go, and I remember I round the corner, and I see VIN Belsen. He's like, "So, Bob, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I can't fail in front of the new guy. That's just a bad example." So, I doubled down and nearly burst my spleen and, shit out my fucking appendix, but I made the run by like 37 seconds. I remember I come across the finish line, and he's like, "Oh, you barely made it. You almost missed it." I go, "I had 37 seconds to spare. It's plenty of time." He just laughed. And he said to me, and I quote, he goes, "Sergeant Bob, I'm sorry to say this, but I can run backwards faster than you can run PT." And I'm like, "Good burn. And you are pretty much correct." And I think he was in the unit like over a year, I guess. And I guess he was horse playing around with a couple of his buddies. And in one of the bathrooms, messed around with one of the stalls. And he came down, and there was a coat hook, and it hooked his eye and like ripped his bottom of his eye, damaged the tear duct. And he had to get like stitches, and they put a tube in there, and he was on profile for quite some time. And I remember when he came in to drill, his eye was all jacked up, and I'm like, what the fuck happened, your peeper?" And he's like, "Oh," he told me the deal. And I'm like, "Oh, you peeping Tom motherfucker, that's what you get." He goes, "Well, I wasn't peeping." I go, "Were you looking over the stall wall?" He's like, "Yeah." "And then you came down and you cut your eye?" He's like, "Yeah." "Well, that's called peeping." But his eye healed up just fine. I had to put some weird drops in it from time to time, but, no blood, no foul. And when I say VIN Belsen reminded me of myself, it kind of did. Because when I first came in the Army, I was Mr. Wide-Eyed Eager Beaver. I wasn't, you know, so innocent and naive as he was in the beginning, but, you know, he had that same love for the Army that I did when I first came in. And I pretty much still have the love of the Army now. It's just, it's been jaded by political correctness and being turned into a social experiment. But, you know, hey, that's another video. Okay, and then we would do a piss test. Like, I think we did one every quarter. You know, we had to have everyone in the unit had to be, you know, have to take at least one piss test a year. So they do the piss test thing, and lo and behold, VIN Belsen left his ID card unsecured. Now, for those of you that don't know this, in the military, the new military ID card has an ID chip in it, and it's basically a sensitive item. So, you know, that's a big no-go. I took the ID card, got in my car, I drove a mile up the road, left it right at the base of a flagpole or of a telephone pole. So I wait like a half an hour. He comes up to me and he's like, "Sorry, Pop, I lost my ID card." I'm like, "I know." He's like, "What?" I go, "Well, can I have it?" I go, "Yeah. It's at the corner over there, you know, at the turnaround for the 1 mile part with the PT test. It's been there for about 20 minutes, so if you run, you could probably get there before somebody picks it up and it's gone forever." He's like, "Oh shit." So he ran out to get his ID card to come back. And I said, "Look, VIN Belsen, you know, anyone can take your ID card if they have that 4-digit code, which is not that complicated to make. They could basically email the sergeant major of the Army and tell him to go pump pumpkins in the pumpkin patch, and you'd be fucked. There's nothing anyone can do to help you out on that one. So secure your shit." You know, I didn't put anything on paper. I didn't believe in that shit. You know, people make mistakes, especially when they're young and they do stupid shit. There's no reason to put negative shit on paper that, you know, 18, 20 years later, when he's trying to be a sergeant major, they say no to him because he was an asshat at 18 or 19 years old. I'm not going to be that guy. But, you know, he ran his 2 miles and that was it. And then there was the same thing happened. He left his cell phone unsecured and it was unlocked on my, not on my desk, but next to my desk. He came in on an RST and I think he just went to lunch or something, left his phone. I remember I get on there, I'm like, oh, Facebook. And I wrote some pretty savory shit on his Facebook and posted it. I was famous for that. And then he came back in and, you know, he found his phone and I can remember he's like, "Oh my God." He had to literally go down to the computer lab at the bottom of the drill hall, sign in, get on an Army computer to get on Facebook to delete the shit that I had posted on his Facebook page for him. And again, I'm like, "Hey, you left your shit unsecured." He was pretty pissed off. And maybe he was there like a year and a half, and he'd done like really good in the Soldier of the Year kind of, or Best Warrior, I don't remember what it was. And they'd promised him all this shit. They promised him Airborne School, and then nobody ever delivered on it, and it was really, you know, just sapping his motivation. And I knew it was becoming a problem because we did a PT test, and you know, he asked, "What do I need to pass?" And then he ran the PT test basically with like 45 seconds to a minute to spare. I knew he was dogging it. I hate it when people do that. So he gets done with the PT test. So I'm like, "Oh, you did a great job on the run. Run it again." So, you know, I made him run 2 more miles just to hit home that, you know, as a soldier, you don't do shit to, you know, 60% standard. I mean, we're going to do shoot 6 out of 10 enemy that are storming your position. No, you're going to try to shoot them all. That's the way it works. But I knew I had a problem on my hands. So I made some phone calls. I jumped the chain of command. I pissed off a whole lot of people. And I got him his airborne slot that he'd been promised. So yes, Mr. Staff Sergeant VIN Belsen was a 5 jump chump. He got to do his airborne school. Now this is one of the other funny stories here. And he was there for both of these because I made him the guidon bearer. So we were having a layout inspection for each company, and I'm standing in front of Bravo company. He's standing next to me, with a guide on. I got my clipboard, I got the hand receipts, I got everything laid out that the company signed for. And I was short some water cans, so I went into the Butler building, which is basically a big building that's almost a whole acre in size. And there was water cans in there from a hospital unit that had disbanded like 5 years before that particular day. So they were just in there. So I took 4 water cans and I put them in my layout. And I remember, you know, it was a Captain's Rumba. He's looking at everything, and he's just like, "Oh, you're missing water cans." And I'm like, "Oh no, sir. There's 4 water cans right there." He's just like, "Well, they're marked the hospital." "Well, that's correct, sir, but that hospital's not here anymore. So those are by default my water cans." He's like, "No, you're gonna get a gig for this." I'm like, "Can I see your hand receipt?" I pull mine out, pull his, and I'm like, "I really don't see water cans marked with 414 specific logos on them on my hand receipt. There are 4 water cans, sir. I'm 100% whole on this inspection." Now, VIN Belsen's standing right there, almost falling over, laughing his balls off because it's hilarious. And then afterwards, you know, he was, you know, very straight and narrow preacher kid. He's like, "Oh, Storm Pop, isn't that stealing?" And I'm like, it's gray area, you know. I mean, if I was taking the water cans and throwing them in my car and driving down and selling them for cash on the economy, then you would have a case for outright theft. But the unit that used to belong or used to own these water cans no longer exists. So they've obviously had their hand receipts cleared. Those are found on installation property, which by regulations I'm allowed to use since we are on the installation. He looks at me, he's like, "I understand. Gray area, Storm Pop. Gray area." And the second story is it's almost the exact same thing, except I had one of those permanent markers of ludicrous size. And I remember the old hospital unit, I drew an X through them, and then I wrote in 414 CA Bravo Company on each of the cans. And Rumba came by and he looked at him. He's like, "All right, water cans are marked correctly." But anyway, you know, this is one of those episodes. Sometimes you got to talk about shit that sucks. And over the past 15 years, on average, I've buried a good soldier at least once a year because of a motorcycle accident or drinking and driving or something along those lines. And I remember, you know, VIN Belsen would call me every once in a while because he moved on to become a drill sergeant. And he'd always ask my opinion on certain hard cases he had for soldiers he was training, and I'd help him out. You know, he'd call me about, you know, girl advice and other, you know, crazy life events that, you know, he wanted basically an honest answer to some very crazy questions. None of them were out of the ordinary. You know, I've seen all the crazy stuff in the Army and pretty much in the world, and none of the stuff he asked me about was anything above and beyond the standard young kid kind of stuff. But it was my honor to mentor him, and I'm sorry he passed away. Hopefully his mom will see this and it'll bring a smile to her face, because her son was top notch. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll talk to you guys later.